So today I want to talk about the massacre at Acoma Pueblo. I want to tell you why I believe it happened. So the massacre at Acoma Pueblo happened in the year 1599. 1 year after Juan de Oñate tried to colonize New Mexico, the people of Acoma Pueblo rose up and rebelled, and in turn, there was a great massacre. Well, let me tell you why this even happened. So whenever the Spaniards were kicking it in their camp, they were partying, drinking. They used to have these plays. They would celebrate the Reconquista of Spain. So they would have soldiers shooting. It would be a mock war, a little mock battle, and so the soldiers would be shooting each other and then falling, and then after the play, they'd get back up and they'd be celebrating. But one day they were doing this. It was either in San Juan or San Gabriel that they were doing this, and some people from Acoma were watching them from a distance, and they seen that after they got shot, they all got back up and started celebrating. So they thought that the Spaniards tricked them. They thought that their weapons were harmless, that they were just used as a fear tactic and that they couldn't really cause damage. So after this, one of Juan de Oñate's nephews and a few other Spaniards, I would say 10 to 15 of them, went to Acoma Pueblo. His name was Juan de Zaldivar, or Juan Zaldivar de Oñate. He was one of the conquistadores that helped conquer New Galicia, with Captain Guzman and Cristobal de Oñate, who was also his uncle. Well, after Cristobal de Oñate died, then some years later passed, Juan de Oñate came to colonize New Mexico. His two nephews, Juan and Vicente Zaldivar, came with him. So on this day, it's said that Juan de Zaldivar and his captains went to the pueblo and they were divided. One native told him, "Hey, look, we got some clothes for you in this house." And then another native, "Hey, we have some money, some whatever, in this house," and they split them up, and then they slaughtered them. Another story says that the Spaniards were being aggressive and inappropriate with their women, and so they jumped them. Either way, the Acoma people jumped Juan de Zaldivar and his men, killing Juan de Zaldivar, and most of the men, a couple got away jumping off of the cliff. Acoma Pueblo is on a high mesa, so they had to jump off the cliff, and they survived. Only a couple survived. Then they went to Juan de Oñate, told him what happened, so he sent Vicente Zaldivar and about 70 men with a cannon and told them to do what they do. When they got to Acoma Pueblo, the natives were on top of the mesa, jeering at them, throwing rocks at them, talking shit. The Spaniards were firing their cannon at them. They were shooting their harquebuses, but they couldn't hit them. Finally, the Spaniards found a way up. They got onto the top of the mesa. It was a 6-day battle, and they say about 600 people died. Some say 800. So hundreds of people died. They got slaughtered. They were chopping them up, throwing body parts off the cliff. They were brutal. And all the survivors were taken to Juan de Oñate. I can't tell you exactly the number of people he sentenced or all that, but I know he defooted a group of them, chopped off their foot, and then he made a lot of them slaves, dispersed them through the kingdom of New Spain, and that was his punishment. Well, let me tell you why I believe this had to happen. You gotta understand, Juan de Oñate grew up in Mexico. His father was Cristobal de Oñate. If you haven't seen my story about him, go watch it. While Cristobal de Oñate fought the famous Mistan War, and he also fought a lot of other rebellions against the Chichimeca Indians. So when Juan de Oñate was growing up, he was a soldier. He grew up fighting the Chichimeca natives, the rebellions. He knew what happened, how rebellions worked. So when he came up and settled New Mexico, he had no way of knowing that the Pueblo people weren't as warlike as the Chichimeca, but he knew how rebellion worked. He knew that if the other Pueblos heard about the Acoma revolt, they would also revolt. And then he would have a revolt of all the Pueblos on his hands. And at this time, there was still about 70 to 100 Pueblos. I don't know exactly how much. We'll just say about 50 at least. All the surrounding Pueblos would have attacked them. They would have slaughtered them. And they would have probably died. Their colony for sure would have been unsuccessful. So not only was he acting out revenge for his nephew and his other soldiers, but he was also administering justice, and he was trying to stop a revolt from happening. So he had to use Acoma kind of as an example. Let me give you an example about how rebellion works in history and how it spreads like a wildfire once it does. The American Revolution, once that happened, the French seen that the Americans rose up and pushed out the British, so they had the French Revolution. Then there was just more revolutions, and that's just how it works. Once people see revolution, they see it's possible, they see it's successful, then they revolt. So he had to put it down before it could start. Acoma had revolted and killed a few of his men. He had to send 70 of his men over there to slaughter them, to make an example out of them, so they could know what could happen to them if they rose up and rebelled. As for the cutting off of the feet, there's two reasons why that could have happened, in my opinion. One, he cut off their feet so they couldn't fight against him. You can't fight one-footed, right? Two, in Spain, during those 700 years that they were fighting the Moors had this thing, after battle, they would cut off the tips of the nose of the people that they would defeat, or they would cut off some kind of body part, so that way they could walk around with their defeat showing. And so maybe Juan de Oñate did it for this too, cut off their feet, so that way, one, they can't rise up and fight against him, and two, it shows that they were defeated. It's a sign of their defeat, and they'll always remember growing up, and so that way they don't revolt again. Now, as bad as these things were, and as bad as it sounds, that's just why I think they happened, and that's why it went down like that. The Acoma seen them practicing their play, so they thought their weapons were harmless, so they jumped them. Then the Spaniards sent 70 soldiers, pretty much slaughtered the whole pueblo to show them that their weapons were in fact very harmful. But that's the story of the Acoma massacre. It was very bloody, very brutal. But shout out to the people of Acoma Pueblo. They're always showing me love in my comments. They always show me love. They're the native pueblo that shows me the most love, always. So shout out to Acoma. Even though my Spanish ancestors did the worst to their pueblo, they understand. History is history. And they show me love. And I show them love back the same. And I'm sorry for what my ancestors did to your pueblo. There's nothing I could do about it. There's nothing, but respect to you guys. Anyway, this is Tragedy. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. I'm out.